All right, what's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary. Today is October 7th, 2024, and it's 8:26 p.m. where I'm at right now. Coming to you to bring the eighth part of the fifth book react we're doing this year. This is for Kamala Harris's The Truths We Hold, the memoir she wrote back in 2019. We should have been finished this book. I apologize to anybody who's like, oh my God, why is he going live every day talking about Kamala? We're just plowing through this book. I've been caught up with work and other stuff and school as well. I'm going to university, and I literally just got home from work about 30 45 minutes ago, something like that. So I want to come here and try to knock out at least 2 chapters today from this book until we plow through it and get it all done. I'm a bit sick today. I have a cold. I'm coming down with a cold, so y'all bear with me. I apologize if I'm sneezing or coughing during the live stream, but y'all wish me well. Hopefully, I get over this by the end of this week, maybe even sooner, because I got a lot on my plate that I'm trying to take care of. But shout out to everybody who's been jumping into the live streams. Nelson and Fast last night, we had a very fun back and forth debating stupid white supremacist ideas. And I'm looking forward to any comments from anybody in the chat section. So I will be reading all the comments. Y'all let me know how y'all feel. Y'all vote on the polls. Let me know how you feel about this election. What's going on in the Middle East, what's going on domestically in America with the hurricanes and everything like that. And we're going to be talking about it. So in our last live stream last night, we finished chapters 6 and 7. In chapter 6, she was talking about immigration and how the Trump administration was separating kids at the border and her efforts while in the Senate to try to fight back against that. I thought it was a bit disingenuous how she was talking about the issues going on in Central America without contextualizing it, talking about how America basically overthrew so many democratically elected leaders there, fought back against populist socialist movements there, and basically destabilize the region, making it seem like the people of Latin America who are emigrating in mass to the U.S. Legally and illegally are somehow incapable of creating societies or countries that function on their own. I thought that was horrible for Kamala to say that, but I do applaud her efforts to some degree to try to have some justice for the families that were separated at the border. And the chapter after that, chapter 7, it was about her mother's death to cancer, which was actually very touching, and also her opinion on the healthcare system in America. We learned some very shocking things about how people are having to pay so much money out of pocket for simple, trivial illnesses or medical treatments that they need, and what she plans to do about it to make it a more affordable system, which is basically expanding Obamacare and stopping the states from blocking the funding that's coming from the federal government to fund Obamacare. And that's pretty much it. Today, we're going to be jumping into Chapter 8, The Cost of Living, and this is still pertinent today. This was written in 2019, about 5 years ago, and this is probably one of the major issues for the 2024 election. So it's crazy how so little has changed. It feels like 2008 never ended, or the after effects of 2008 still have not been overcome. I'm going to be reading this chapter, hopefully chapter 9 as well, but I might be too sick to get all through it, but I'm definitely going to wrap up chapter 8 today. I got class at 10 o'clock, so I'm going to be trying to do as much as I can. So let's go. When I was getting ready to write this book, I spent a good deal of time going through photo albums, reminiscing with Maya, and unpacking old boxes, including things my mother had saved. It's been a blessing. I've had the chance to sit with good memories that don't always make it to the front of my mind. When we were growing up, our mother always made chiles rellenos around Christmas. After she died, I wanted so badly to find the recipe. I searched everywhere I could, including online, but nothing matched my mother's version. I felt so defeated, as though I'd lost more than just the flavor of her cooking. And then, while I was digging through my cookbooks, I found a notebook, and as soon as I opened it, the recipe fell right out of the pages and onto the floor. I was transported just by reading my mother's handwriting. It was like she was there with me, still responding to my needs. I also found a couple of pot holders that Maya and I had woven on plastic looms. Any reader who grew up in the 1970s probably knows just what I mean. Our mother made shell stitch. Okay, that's some old people stuff. That's some real, what's the name for the people after the boomers? Because that sounds like something that their generation can bond over. All right, here comes the sickness. Sorry about that. This is going to be a gross stream. Gross stream. Anyway, a mother loved to talk with her hands, and she was always using her hands to cook, to clean, to comfort. She was always busy. Work itself was something to value, hard work especially. And she made sure that we, her daughters, internalized that message and the importance of working with purpose. She also showed us in so many ways how much she valued all work, not just her own. When something good would happen at the lab, my mother would come home with flowers for our babysitter. I wouldn't have been able to do what I did if you didn't do what you do, she would say. Thank you for everything. She saw the dignity in the work that society requires to function. She believed that everyone deserves respect for the work they do and that hard effort should be rewarded and honored. I'd hear the same thing at Rainbow Sign, where speakers would talk about Dr. King's Poor People's Campaign, about his belief that all labor has dignity and his effort to make it so. As part of that effort, Dr. King had gone to Memphis in 1968 to join Black sanitation workers in their fight for basic decency. Day in and day out, these workers rode the trucks that hauled away the city's garbage. The city didn't provide uniforms. Instead, workers were forced to befoul their own clothes on the job. They worked long hours without water to drink or a place to wash their hands. Most of the tubs had holes in them, one sanitation worker recounted, garbage leaking all over you. He described how when the workers got home in the evening, they'd remove their shoes and clothes at the door and maggots would fall out. Absolutely gross. Absolutely gross. Oh, that's disgusting. For this hard, indispensable work, they received little more than minimum wage. They didn't get overtime pay. They had no sick leave. If they were injured at work and needed time to mend, as happened often, they were likely to be fired. And if bad weather made trash collection impossible, they were sent home without pay. Many needed government assistance to feed their families. When the city refused to compensate the families of two sanitation workers who were crushed to death by the trash compactor, it became too much for the others to bear. With great courage, 1,300 Memphis sanitation workers went on strike, demanding safer conditions, better pay, and benefits, and recognition of their union. They were on strike for their families, for their children, and for themselves. It was, above all else, a battle for dignity. The signs they held at marches said simply, "I am a man." When King arrived at Bishop Charles Mason Temple in Memphis on March 18th, 1968, a crowd of 25,000 people had gathered to hear him speak. So often we overlook the work and the significance of those who are not in professional jobs, of those who are not in the so-called big jobs, he said. But let me say to you tonight that whenever you are engaged in work that serves humanity and is for the building of humanity, it has dignity and it has worth. Shout out to Martin Luther King. Real one, real one. I was listening to Cornell West today say Martin Luther King, he heard him speak, and when he heard about his death, he was about 15 or 16 years old, and he said that motivated him to go into academia and led him on the path that he's on today. So shout out to Martin Luther King. He continues to inspire us beyond the grave, and I definitely want to read one of his books for the Book React series. I feel like that's a must. Continuing here. We are tired, King said to the audience in Memphis. We are tired of our children having to attend overcrowded, inferior quality schools. We're tired of having to live in dilapidated, substandard housing conditions. We are tired of walking the streets in search of jobs that do not exist, of working our hands off and laboring every day and not even making a wage adequate to get the basic necessities of life. 16 days later, King returned to Memphis to march on behalf of the strikers, speaking again at Bishop Charles Mason Temple, where he declared, "I've been to the mountaintop." The next evening, April 4th, 1968, he was killed by an assassin. 2 months after that, on June 5th, Robert F. Kennedy was murdered as well. The nation's clearest voices and strongest leaders in the fight for economic justice had been suddenly, irrevocably silenced. That was half a century ago. In some ways, we have come so far since then, and in others, we have barely budged. I remind people that when you adjust for inflation, the federal minimum wage is actually lower now than when Dr. King spoke of starvation wages in 1968. What does that say about how our country values the sanctity and dignity of work? Americans are a hardworking bunch. We pride ourselves on our work ethic. And for generations, most of us have been raised to believe that there are few things more honorable than putting in an honest day's work to take care of our family. We grew up trusting that when we worked hard and did well, we would be rewarded for our effort. But the truth is, for most Americans, it hasn't been that way for an awfully long time. Ain't that the truth? I'm a hardworking black man, just came back home from work, and gosh, it seems like it's never enough, especially here in Hungary where the groceries are expensive. Rent is cheap, groceries expensive, and it never feels like it's enough. Ooh, it's going to be a sick stream. Y'all bear with me. Gross stream. Putting in work even while we're sick. Let's go. Whenever there is a major push to pressure Congress into doing the right thing, activists and elected leaders implore the American people to call and write their representatives. These days, the phone lines are overwhelmed by Americans engaged in an extraordinary thing, exercising democracy. And in a number of cases, it has really mattered. I believe that the repeal of the Affordable Care Act failed in 2017 because congressional Republicans had taken a nonpartisan issue, access to affordable health care, and made it a partisan one. And the people just weren't having it. It activated and energized folks to fight back. And because of the pressure they put on key senators, the people prevailed. That means that millions of people still have health coverage because individual Americans picked up the phone and wrote letters. For me, reading these letters isn't just about understanding where people stand on major policy issues. It's about understanding what their lives are like, both the joys and the fears. When people write to me, it is often as a last resort. They are struggling and in real trouble, but nothing else they've tried has worked. And so they turn to me and share with me the things that have upended their lives. Dear Senator Harris, my husband and I work full-time jobs, yet we still struggle every week to make ends meet. I get full health care coverage for my 2-year-old son, for which I thank God every day, but can't figure out why my husband and I can't get full coverage either. We can't get help with daycare because we make too much money, but we can't sorry. We can't get help with daycare because we make too much money, but yet we can't afford to pay $50 a month for daycare, so we depend on family. But they have their own problems. There have been too many occasions when we lose money because we can't get a babysitter for us to get to work. I'm begging with my life that this needs to change. Please, for the love of God, help. This is just not okay. I'm confused, angry, frustrated, and I feel so betrayed by our government. I don't ever ask for help unless I need it, and I seriously need it. Wow, that's powerful. Gross stream, but not as bad as the people that are going through this. Like, God damn. Okay. Every letter stands on its own, but together they tell the same story. All right. Nelson Moreno says Albanians are always asking for help. Ain't that the truth? Always coming in saying, please help us. Our country is poor. We have nothing in our country. All we have is pizza and ice cream. Please stop picking on us. So then they become white supremacists. Ain't that the truth? All right. Every letter stands on its own, but together they tell the same story. It is the story of Americans trapped in a cost of living crisis, where everything from housing and healthcare to childcare and education is way more expensive than it used to be, while wages remain as low as they've been for decades. The letters I receive consistently tell the story of the hollowing out of the middle class and of an economic life defined by intense struggle. When I wake up in the middle of the night with a thought on my mind, I remind myself that in countless households around the country, someone else is wide awake too, millions of someone else's. And I imagine that the majority of them are asking themselves questions about their greatest fears. Am I going to be able to provide a good life for my children? What if I can never make ends meet? How will I get through the month? The American people have not given up on the American dream. I know this to be true. And when you can't sleep at night, how can you dream? How can you dream when, on average, a year of childcare for a baby or a toddler is more expensive than a year of in-state public college tuition? How can you dream when the cost of higher education has gone up more than 3 times faster than wages since I was in school in the 80s? How can you dream when you are drowning in student loan debt? How can you dream if you make minimum wage and work 40 hours a week, knowing that in 99% of US counties you can't afford the market rate rent on the average one-bedroom apartment? How can you dream when your pay barely budges no matter how hard you work, while everything else keeps getting so much more expensive? How can you dream when your son is sick but you can't afford your copay or deductible? Okay, this is Kamala's I have a dream speech. Okay, Kamala, say, how can you dream? I just want to see Kamala stand in front of the Lincoln Memorial, say, how can you dream when your pay is so low that you got to live off of $1 meals from McDonald's? Oh, wait, they don't even have those anymore. Everything is so goddamn expensive. Kamala's how I got a dream. How can you dream? Anyway, continue here. A middle class life isn't what it used to be. And right now, it isn't what it's supposed to be. Being middle class ought to mean having financial security and stability. But how is it that possible? But how is that possible when the cost of living is so high that you live one setback away from catastrophe and injury and illness? Nobody expects life to be easy, but it's not supposed to be a life altering crisis when your car's transmission fails. And yet, for so many, it is. One setback in the savings account gets emptied, another in the retirement account goes too. Soon you're carrying a bigger balance on your credit card than you know is safe, but what choice do you have? You have to get the card fixed if you're going to keep your job. There is a rent or a mortgage to pay. Going here to the comments, Nelson says, Albanians don't even know what dreams are. Yes, because their lives are only nightmares. Being an Albanian is a nightmare. Ain't that the truth? Continuing here. According to one survey, 57% of Americans don't have enough cash to cover a $500 unexpected expense. That's one of the reasons I've introduced the Lift the Middle Class Tax Act in the United States, a bill that creates a major new middle class tax credit that would provide eligible families up to $6,000 a year, the equivalent of $500 a month. Families will be able to receive the credit as a monthly stipend rather than wait for a refund the following year. It's a different kind of safety net, one that prevents hardworking people from falling out of the middle class or gives them a fair shot at attaining it for their families. This is the kind of tax relief we can provide when we stop giving endless tax cuts to corporations and the wealthy. That's fire. That's absolutely fire. This is the first thing she said in her book that actually got me excited. Giving $500 a month to American families. I like that. It's a start. It's not what we want because the U.S. government got enough money to give everybody $10,000 a month. Facts. Yes, we do. And anybody who tells you different is a goddamn liar. And they're a cut to the corporations. Facts, facts, facts. America definitely has the power and the ability to make every American ball out of control. Ball out of control. This is the first time she said something that actually got me hot. I'm actually rock hard for Kamala now. That's fire. $500 a month to American families. Dope ass idea. That's the only thing she said. Everything else has been blase, neoliberal sameness, but that's fire. Fire idea. All right. I think of Mr. and Mrs. Shelton. She was a nursery school teacher and he was a construction worker. And on those incomes, they were able to purchase a 2-bedroom home that was everything they dreamed of and everything they had worked for. But at the time of this writing, that house is listed on Zillow at $886,000, which would be impossible to purchase on the salaries of a teacher and a construction worker. I recognize that California has become extraordinarily expensive, but this is a problem in major metropolitan areas all across the country. Sorry. According to a 2018 analysis by Redfin, in cities like Denver and Phoenix, less than 1% of the homes on the market were affordable on the average teacher's salary. In rural areas, housing affordability issues aren't as severe, but communities have been devastated by a lack of jobs. According to a recent report, only 3% of job growth in the 21st century has come from rural areas. That has forced people to find work far away from home, which leaves them with the awful choice. Sorry. Endure an hours-long commute every day or move away from the place where their family has lived for a generation, the place where their friends live, where their kids play Little League baseball, where they have always gone to church. Going to the comments here. I would give free toothpaste to every Albanian. Diddy loved Albanian men. Probably. I mean, you need a group of, desperately poor, ignorant men to abuse. So I would imagine Diddy, abusing quite a few shikaperias. Pardon. I'm sick, but I'm grinding it out on live stream. Y'all don't tell me I'm lazy. Y'all can never call me a lazy, non-working black man. I just did a bunch of hours teaching English, a bunch of hours at university, and now I'm on live stream reading for y'all, going hard in the yard. Y'all can't stop me. I'm big motherfucking top. Let's go. I also think of the workers I've met along the way who are severely undervalued in this economy. Several years ago, I met a woman named Wendy through SEIU and got to spend the day with her, watching her work up close. She had changed jobs when her elderly mother got sick, becoming a home healthcare worker so she could be the one to take care of her day and night. That meant everything from lifting her mother out of her bed to dressing her, feeding her, assisting her in the bathroom, measuring and tracking her vitals, helping her into her wheelchair, and taking her out of for a walk and keeping her cognitively engaged throughout. It was detailed and demanding work physically, mentally, and emotionally. And yet in 2017, the average home health aide in the United States was earning too little to keep a four-person household above the poverty line. And because they are often contractors, they aren't always eligible for employee benefits. That strikes me as outrageous. As the baby boomer generation continues to retire, we're going to need more home health aides, 1.2 million by 2026. And this is how we intend to treat them. What does this say about the value we place on caring for older Americans? What does this say about how we honor our elders? The cost of living crisis is especially hard on women. Women are still paid on average 80 cents on the dollar compared with men, a gap that is even more punishing for Black American women who are paid only 63 cents for every dollar earned by white men. As the National Women's Law Center points out, that means a Black woman who works full-time year-round comes up more than $21,000 behind her white male counterpart. That affects everyone in her home. It's even worse for Latinas who make just 54 cents on the dollar. Politicians talk a big game about the value of hard work, but it's time we speak some truth. The truth is that the economy stopped rewarding and valuing most hard work a long time ago, and we've got to acknowledge that if we're going to change it. Let's start by reflecting on how we got here. For several decades after the Second World War, workers got pay raises when companies did well, and the government gave people a hand up, offering free education through the GI Bill. The productivity gains necessary to grow the economy were remarkable. In the 3 decades after the war, productivity improved a staggering 97%. The difference then was that everyone shared in the bounty. During that same period, worker wages grew 90%. That's how the United States was able to build the world's largest middle class. But in the 1970s and 80s, corporate America decided to go its own way. Instead of spending their earnings on workers, the corporations decided that their only real obligation was to their shareholders. From big businesses' perspective, it was those who owned a piece of the company who deserved the lion's share of the riches, not the people who made the company run. So while productivity improved 74% between 1973 and 2013, worker compensation rose just 9%. Gonna jump into the comments here. Kamala is for the working men, for at least for that policy about giving families $500 a month in tax credits or something like that. Rwanda has a higher GDP than Albania. Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? It's a third world, dilapidated, failed nation. Ain't that facts? We're just talking facts here, buddy. All right. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah. I think what really happened in the 80s, it was policy change. I don't think it was just the corporations decided. I think there was something that Reagan did. I'm not a historian like that. But I do remember that there was probably some policy that Reagan put in place that incentivized corporations to not give bonuses, right, to their employees. I think it was to buy back their stock or just to treat shareholders with the best returns possible. I think it was allowing stock buybacks because I think possibly stock buybacks were like illegal until like Reagan said, yeah, do it. Yeah. All right. So, but don't quote me on that. It's just my thing is like I'm automatically, how can I say this? Doubtful that things happen in this world just because of certain decisions or one-off ideas, right? Like so one CEO says, "Hey, let's care more about the shareholders than our workers." It was probably some material interest that they had, some change in their material existence that caused that to happen. That's the point I'm trying to make. Continuing here. All right. In the 1980s, President Reagan made that idea core to the Republican Party's view of economics. Cut taxes for corporations, cut taxes for shareholders, oppose minimum wage increases, oppose the very idea of a minimum wage, dismantle organized labor, the most powerful force fighting for workers in Washington, roll back government oversight, ignore the collateral damage. This was the ushering in of a new era of selfishness and greed, and it was frighteningly effective. Corporate profits have soared, but American workers haven't got a meaningful raise in 40 years. And yet there is no shame, it seems, in CEOs making more than 300 times the wage of their average worker. The goal of economic growth has to be to grow the pie. But if all that's left for workers are the crumbs, what kind of economy are we really building? Going to the comments here, Nelson says, according to Google, Botswana has higher GDP and a similar crime index with Albania. Ain't that a shame? Ain't that a shame? And that's supposed to be the master race. They claim that they're whites, they're Aryans, they're pure. Ain't that a shame? I know Nelson, I know Nelson is probably trying to bait Fast to come out, but Fast is somewhere probably selling bussy just to get a plane ticket to Germany because we know no Albanians want to stay in Albania. Sorry, guys, I'm sick, but I'm pushing it out. Let's go. Hold on. Let's keep on going. So, this was the context in which we entered the 21st century. The American people got sandwiched between forces beyond their control. On one side, outsourcing and offshoring that eviscerated the manufacturing sector, and on the other, the worst recession since the Great Depression. Suddenly, the jobs were gone. Communities turned into ghost towns. Nelson Moreno says, "We was conquerors and philosophers, dirty Albanian and rat." Ain't that something? Ain't that something? They were never philosophers, never conquerors, only got conquered, only got punked and cucked and bussified. Continuing here. I read so many letters that underscore the significance of the passage of time. A man, 62, who lost everything in the Great Recession, who has nothing left for retirement and is running out of working years. A couple dealing with a family health crisis who can't afford to pay their medical bills and still cover the monthly rent. They need help right now. They can't wait. Anyone stuck in a cycle of financial desperation will tell you it's an emergency, that there is no time for delay. Dinner has to go on the table tonight. Gas has got to go in the tank in the morning. The bills have to be paid tomorrow. The rent is due at the end of the week. There is truly no time to spare. During this period that there have also been during this period, there have also been a rash of corporate predators who have taken advantage of and often ruined vulnerable people. Amongst the worst of these predators are the for-profit colleges that became the darlings of Wall Street during this time. Generations of Americans have been told that the best shot of opportunity is to get a degree. And a lot of folks took that advice to heart and went for it, sometimes at great cost to themselves and their families. Going here, Nelson says, Kamala didn't say the word capitalism in this book, not even once. She must not care. She must be a communist. She didn't say capitalism once. She must be a commie. Maybe we're finding out Kamala is Comrade Allah. Wow, that was really bad. That was really, really bad. Comrade Allah? I don't know. I thought it worked. In my head, it did. Anyway, sorry, guys. Gross strain. Oh, I'm sick as hell, but I'm pushing through. Let's go. Dear Senator Harris, at one point, I considered getting 2 jobs to provide for my son and me. I concluded the best solution for me was to go back to school and continue to work my minimum wage job so my son wouldn't miss out on quality time with me. I decided I would struggle through poverty long enough to complete school. This is a reality for a lot of Americans. The problem is that a lot of people signed up at for-profit colleges that promised them a great education and a great future, when in truth, the degrees they were offering weren't worth much of anything. When I was Attorney General of California, we took on Corinthian Colleges Inc., one of the largest for-profit college scams in the country. In order to get students and investors to sign up, Corinthian representatives lied incessantly. They told investors that more than 60% of their students were successfully placed in sustainable jobs. They charged the students enormous amounts for their degrees and told them that some programs had 100% job placement rates, even when there was no evidence that a single graduate had received a job. They advertised programs that they didn't offer and penalized their telemarketers if they revealed the truth to prospective students. Going here to the comments here. Simon is sick because he shook hands with an Albanian child. I probably did. Yeah. I've been shaking a lot of hands at school. So yeah, maybe I ran into one of them dirty shikapities. The ones that be digging in their booty and then shaking hands. Yeah, probably. Craig Matt says, "What up, Simon? Drink a lot of water and citrus juice, OJ, lemon juice, grapefruit juice." Thank you. My beautiful wife, made me some tea right here. You can't see it, but thanks for reminding me. I got the tea right here. I'm deep off in this book and didn't even realize that I should be drinking my tea. Pardon. But shout out Craig Matt for looking out for me. Continuing here. Even more venal was the way Corinthian went after vulnerable people. They targeted people living at the poverty line, people who had decided to go back to school and earn a degree so they could better take care of themselves and the people they loved. People who had lost jobs during the Great Recession and who believed their best chance in the job market was to acquire a new set of skills. Corinthians' internal documents betrayed the company's attitude toward its own students. They called their target demographic isolated, impatient men and women with low self-esteem who have few people in their lives who care about them and who are stuck and unable to see and plan well for their own future. As far as I was concerned, this conduct was no different from the criminal predators I've known, purposely targeting those most in need. Of course, most public companies don't act in such a predatory way, but a central tenet of corporate governance to create value for shareholders, even if it's to the detriment of workers, has created a great deal of harm of its own. For example, to raise stock prices, executives engage in a concept called buybacks, in which a company buys its own stock off the market, often causing the stock price to jump. Putting aside whether or not buybacks are ever an appropriate tool, let's acknowledge how extreme its use has become. Between 2003 and 2012, S&P 500 companies spent 91% of their earnings on buybacks and dividends for shareholders. That leaves 9% to invest across the entire company in everything from research and development to workers' wages. That should be straight up illegal. It should be illegal for a company to buy back their own stock. That just sounds like a scam. It's inherently flawed. Inherently flawed. And I can't believe we allow that to happen in America, right? What's the result of all this? It's been great for the richest 1% of American households who now own 40% of the nation's wealth, which adds up to roughly $40 trillion. But it's been a financial nightmare for the middle class. According to research done by United Way, 43% of households can't afford basic expenses: a roof over their head, food on the table, childcare, healthcare, transportation, and a cell phone. What are people supposed to think about a government that has left them behind? How are you supposed to feel when you're drowning and no one is coming to your aid? And then you turn on the television and hear that the economy is doing great. Great for whom? It's not great for people who have had to move hours away from their job just to find an affordable place to live. It's not great for people who are dropping out of the workforce because they can't afford childcare. It's not great for the people who are giving up on their dream of going to college because they can't afford it. And yet, with millions of Americans hanging by a thread, the White House reached for scissors. In 2017, the administration cut taxes for people who didn't need it and raised taxes on people who can't afford it. They sabotaged the Affordable Care Act, driving up premiums. They ignited a trade war that could lead to higher prices on things we all buy, from groceries to cars. They nominated judges intent on destroying organized labor. They canceled a pay raise for federal civil servants, everyone from transportation security officers to food inspectors, park rangers, medical personnel, and more. They even halted the debt relief policy that we put in place to help Corinthians College victims. For good measure, they did away with net neutrality, which will allow internet companies to charge a premium for popular websites for the first time, adding an unacceptable new bill to the stack. This is the crazy thing. Like, all the Trump supporters are always saying, man, life was better under Trump. Trump gave us money, bruh. Okay, he gave you like what, $1,200 in stimulus check money, but he made everything else more expensive, healthcare more expensive, your taxes more expensive. Shit, didn't raise the wages of the federal civil servants and stuff like that. Makes no sense. People are all on Trump's dick because he gave them a $1,200 check, and they jumping up and down like some hoes, not realizing on the back end, Trump got y'all bent over, making y'all pay more for everything else. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. Anyway, dear Senator Harris, I'm a high school student, and most of my schoolwork depends on the internet and the tools it gives us. My school is small and doesn't have much money. Plus, I come from a poor background, and my parents struggle to make ends meet. If you take away net neutrality, you're basically taking away all the tools the internet provides students like me to succeed in school and adding more problems to poor families all over the nation. We are running out of time. That's the hard truth. And not just in terms of dealing with what is so urgent right now. We are running out of time to deal with major changes to come. With the rise of artificial intelligence, we are likely to face an automation crisis in this country with millions of jobs on the line. Industries are changing. Self-driving trucks could cost 3.5 million truck drivers their jobs. The entire tax preparation business could disappear too. The McKinsey Global Institute found that as many as 375 million people worldwide will need to switch jobs because of automation, and predicts that 23% of current working hours could become automated by 2030. Another analysis suggests that automation could displace 2.5 million jobs a year in the near term. We have seen already the cost of displacement, but nothing has yet prepared us for what is to come. I have to say, the tax preparation industry in America is a scam. You know, in other countries, you just go online, press a button, and your taxes are like paid for. They just need you to like verify your taxes, right? In America, we have this $1 billion industry of professionals to do taxes for us that doesn't need to exist, right? The government already knows how much you're paying or how much you're bringing in if they're tracking your income, right? Which a lot of Americans do. So it doesn't make sense for us to have this $1 billion tax industry. Our tax preparation system should be much more simplified. In other countries, it's not that hard to pay taxes, but in America, it's a whole racket. Ah, all right. Nelson Moreno says, Fast is traumatized. He def got shook yesterday. Hope he comes back. I hope he comes back and actually comes to learn, because I didn't block him. I didn't ban him. And I don't want anybody to ban any more white supremacists. If a white supremacist, a racist nut comes in here, or just a right wing idiot comes in here talking and blabbing out his mouth, let's not ban them. Let's let them talk, because they're teachable moments in their idiocy. You get what I'm saying? Anyway, continuing here. All right. So we will also have to cope with the realities of climate change, which is as much an economic crisis as it is an environmental one. In 2017, extreme weather events in America, things like hurricanes, tornadoes, droughts, and floods, killed more than 362 people, displaced more than 1 million, and caused more than $3 billion in damage. Experts predict that over time, things will get much worse. The economic toll will follow, hitting states in the South and the lower Midwest the hardest. After Hurricane Harvey hit the Gulf Coast in 2017, a study found that in Houston, 3 of every 10 affected residents rent or mortgage. 25% had trouble paying for meals. Climate change perils industries too. Temperature and current changes in the oceans are already hurting the fishing industry. The agricultural industry faces dangers on multiple fronts: a rise in invasive species, pests, fungus, and disease, changing weather patterns that will lower yields, and the constant fear of drought. Put bluntly, we have work to do. Hard work, indispensable work. We have everything we need, all of the raw ingredients to build an economy for the 21st century that is fair and sturdy, an economy that rewards the work of those who sustain it. But we have to hurry, and we have to be willing to speak truth. We need to acknowledge that the jobs of the future are going to require people to earn an education after high school, whether it's a certificate or a university degree. This isn't optional anymore. If we want to be true to the principle that all Americans deserve access to public education, then we can't stop funding it after high school. We need to invest in our workforce now and in the future. That means we're going to have to invest in more post-high school education too. It means, among other things, that we have to make debt-free college a reality. Facts, facts, facts. There we go. Comrade Kamala talking now. Free college for everybody, $500 for American middle class families. Facts, facts, facts. Now we're actually talking. These are real big dog policies. Yes, these are the policies we need, not no other stuff. This is what we need. Free education for everybody. You get a degree, and you get a degree, and you get a degree. Everybody should learn, and everybody should have to take a philosophy class. How about that too? All right, let's speak truth about housing affordability. We can't have a functioning society if people can't afford to live in it. The housing crisis is not something we can just shrug off as if it is a fact of nature. We've got to make a major effort, from changing zoning laws to encouraging new and affordable housing to giving relief to people who are struggling right now to pay the rent. For starters, I introduced a Senate bill that would give overburdened renters some relief. If someone is paying more than 30% of their income in rent and utilities, they would receive a new refundable tax credit to help defray their housing costs. But there's much more to do. Let's speak truth about childcare. If we don't find a way to make it affordable, we're not only subjugating people in financial crisis, we are also making it harder for women to stay in the workforce when they want to. This is one of the systemic barriers to women's growth and the success in the workplace. We need to tear it down. And let's speak truth about what we have to build up, to put people to work in well-paid jobs and to prevent our economy from lagging. We should be investing in rebuilding our nation's infrastructure. We have roads and bridges that need building and upgrading. We have broadband internet infrastructure to build in rural areas that still lack it. We have new wind farms and transmission lines that need installing. We have airports that need modernizing and subways in dire need of repair. If not for ourselves, shouldn't we at least do this work for our children and grandchildren? Go to the comments here. Nelson said, "This is the Kamala I knew way back in the day." You mean way back in the day when you were beating it up, Nelson? When you were making a holla, 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 Kamala? Comrade Kamala. Free college and $500 for you, and your mama. All right. Let's also speak some truth about organized labor, which has been systematically dismantled by the Republican Party. Less than 7% of the private workforce is represented by unions today, and a 2018 Supreme Court ruling is likely to decimate public sector union membership as well. Many people have already written the obituary for the labor movement, but we can't accept that. Unions are the ones lobbying in Washington exclusively on behalf of workers. They are the only ones who have given the power to the people in the workplace. In the midst of a Republican effort to hollow out the middle class, it is the unions that have successfully compelled management to pay better wages and provide better benefits. We need a rebirth of organized labor in America. And let's speak one final truth. Big corporations and the richest people in the richest country in the world can afford to pay their fair share of taxes so that we can fix the economy. It's necessary, it's moral, and it's wise. All right, and that's chapter 8, talking about the economy, the cost of everything going up, everything like that. All right. Nelson says she seems economically in the center now. I would say a bit center left, but yeah, a bit center left. Not as far as we want it to go, but that's pretty damn close. Pretty damn close. Right? In the communist utopia, we would send Kamala to the re-education camp, not the gulag, because she has the right ideas. She just needs to be pushed. We just need to tell Kamala, don't be scared to come out the closet, comrade. Come out the closet, comrade. It's okay. We just need to tell Kamala it's all right. Wear that red beret proudly. You get what I'm saying? I got class in about an hour, and as you guys see, I've been hella sick this entire live stream. So we're going to come to chapter 9 tomorrow, I promise. Just reading chapter 9. We're just going to knock this out chapter by chapter, layer by layer, piece by piece. And shout out to everybody who tuned in. Shout out to Nelson. Shout out to Craig Mack. Fast, come back if you really want this work. And yeah. Nelson says Albanians suffer from a weird form of white. Stay away, Simon. Be safe. And we're going to wrap it up with that. See y'all tomorrow for chapter 9. Y'all be easy out there. Peace.